It's the holidays, you're busy, we know. So if you can't make it to a Charles Bookwalter for Congress Town Hall, we'll bring the Town Hall to you. Join Charles Bookwalter Thursday nights at 7 p.m. for a digital Town Hall, streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Jump into the comments section to join in the conversation. Make a comment or ask Charles for his opinions on the issues that are most important to you. That's the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall, streaming live beginning at 7 p.m. Thursday nights. Exclusively on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Search Bookwalter for Congress to learn more.
Hello, my name's Charles Bookwalter, and I'm running in the 4th Congressional District to represent you. Jim Baird claims that he wants to cut wasteful federal spending, the same claims he made in 2018. Well, he's had 6 years to do that, so let's check out the record. My name's Charles Bookwalter, and I need your vote on May 7th in the primary. Please check out bookwalterforcongress.com. Thank you.
Our nation is at a breaking point. Out of control crime, runaway inflation, political corruption, and politicians who talk a big game but just can't seem to deliver. Charles Bookwalter is a proven conservative leader, a man of faith and conviction, a former Green Beret. Charles Bookwalter offered his life in the service of his nation once before and is now willing to serve again. To learn more about Charles Bookwalter and his vision for the state of Indiana and this great nation, visit bookwalterforcongress.com. That's bookwalterforcongress.com. Donate, volunteer, join in, stand up, and fight back.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I'm running to represent you in Indiana's 4th Congressional District. Why am I running? Simple. The out-of-control spending, well, it's out of control, and somebody has to do something about it. Take, for example, this taxpayer-funded billboard that was strategically placed by Representative Baird in front of my Frankfort, Indiana, Jimmy John's franchise. Nice one, Jim. Now, to the untrained eye, this billboard looks exactly like a campaign ad, but it's not. It's franked mail. It's your tax dollars being used by an incumbent to remind you of all the reasons that you should go vote for them. And every day I leave work, I'm reminded exactly why I'm running for Congress. Jim Baird won't let me forget. Thanks, Jim.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
It's the holidays, you're busy, we know. So if you can't make it to a Charles Bookwalter for Congress Town Hall, we'll bring the Town Hall to you. Join Charles Bookwalter Thursday nights at 7 p.m. for a digital Town Hall, streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Jump into the comments section to join in the conversation. Make a comment or ask Charles for his opinions on the issues that are most important to you. That's the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall, streaming live beginning at 7 p.m. Thursday nights. Exclusively on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Search Bookwalter for Congress to learn more. Our nation is at a breaking point. Out of control crime, runaway inflation, political corruption, and politicians who talk a big game but just can't seem to deliver. Charles Bookwalter is a proven conservative leader, a man of faith and conviction, a former Green Beret. Charles Bookwalter offered his life in the service of his nation once before and is now willing to serve again. To learn more about Charles Bookwalter and his vision for the state of Indiana and this great nation, visit bookwalterforcongress.com. That's bookwalterforcongress.com. Donate, volunteer, join in, stand up, and fight back.
Welcome to the show. My name is Kramer. This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Let us know what you think. You can ask a question, and Charles will be answering those. Some of the topics we'll be covering tonight, the Supreme Court of the United States is having oral arguments today about Trump's availability or eligibility to be on the ballots of Colorado and other states around the nation. Also, the Supreme Court of Hawaii has said that there's no state constitutional right for the inhabitants of Hawaii to bear arms. We'll get into that a little bit as well as the Tucker Tucker interview with Putin. That is going on live. We'll jump into that from time to time. And now the guy you've been waiting for. Here's our guy, Charles Bookwalter. Charles, what are you up to tonight? How are you feeling?
Very much, Kramer, for the introduction. We need to welcome everybody that left the Tucker interview, because they couldn't miss the digital town hall on Thursday night. The Bookwalter for Congress decided I'm going to push pause and I'm going to go to the town hall. Thank you so much for joining us. And hey, let's not forget another very important. I'll remind everybody the very important Indiana Supreme Court case that will be held on Monday morning at 9 a.m. where the Supreme Court will be hearing the oral arguments for the two primary rule, the John Rust case that Michelle Harder will be arguing in front of the Supreme Court. So I encourage you, if you're in Indiana, to head down there. The Supreme Court in Indiana, by the way, it's the oldest Supreme Court in the nation. It's the oldest active Supreme Court in the United States. It's beautiful. It's large. It's got plenty of room, and we'll be down there to hear those oral arguments. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we've had a big day today. A lot going on. Let's talk initially about this case of the oral arguments being heard in front of the Supreme Court. Charles, did you get a chance to listen to much of that today?
Not a lot. I saw it, and I saw a clip of. Was that the clip of that female that was testifying in front of the? No,
that was a different hearing. Molly Hemingway. We'll get to that here in just a moment. Just as important. But basically, what was happening today is that the officials of Colorado were there to argue why they have the right to remove Trump from the ballots in Colorado based on a post-Civil War law that was put in place to keep Confederates from being able to run for federal office. Federal office. And that's the excuse that they're using. The defense is saying that no one has been committed or no one has been indicted or charged or convicted of a crime that would allow them to do this. And so that's the situation.
Yeah, and of course, everyone knows that was written for Civil War generals, that they didn't want to consolidate power to do that again. It was a way to punish them. It was not intended to keep the most popular candidate of one of the two major political parties off of the ballot. It's incredible that we're even dealing with this right now. And, some people challenge my support for Donald Trump because of some of the things that he's done in the past. But it's things like this that I can't help but look at it and say, like, these people, these enemies of Donald Trump are the greatest enemies of humankind that we've ever seen before.
I agree.
And so they are, if they're an enemy of Donald Trump, then I am an ally of Donald Trump. Because if they're going to wield this government against him, if they're going to go out after him without even having a conviction and manipulating all of these reports and documents, then I've never been more emboldened to stand behind this guy. Like I've said before, and like I said in Iowa at that caucus, we're standing up and supporting Donald Trump to save our own skin at this point, for goodness sakes. And 100%. We ought to rally behind this guy and take some of that political power and start holding people accountable. This next 2024 election is all about accountability, in my estimation.
Well, what I think is going on here, Charles, is look at the black community, in particular black males, that have come to Donald Trump's side as allies because they realize just how corrupt the justice system has been for 20, 30, 40 years and how it has just decimated the black community. And they're seeing the exact same weapon being used against Trump. And they're going, that's my guy. I can get behind him because he's suffering through the exact same thing. And when this gets passed, he's going to do something about it. I can guarantee you that Trump becomes president of the United States again, the justice system in this nation gets changed. Do you agree?
Yeah, look, and this is something that I've been talking about in all these town halls that I've been talking about. The idea that all these underlying issues that we talk about, this one right here, the weaponization against Donald Trump, or how the U.S. government has manipulated and oppressed a minority race. It's because they come up with all these rules. It's that managerial class that I keep talking about. This common thread through all this is a managerial class, how they're destroying America, either by design, or incompetence, or merely by inaction, because it's too hard to go to Washington, D.C. for some of these people and stand up against it. So looking through all these lenses of election integrity, of medical liberty, the Green New Deal energy scam, war, borders, all of this managerial class has told us for the longest time that they're smarter than us and that they need to manage this system. They're managing this system into a socialist hellscape. And then on the alternate side of that, the other side of it is forgetting the name of the author's name, but he talks about the country class. And the country
club class, right?
Yeah, there's the ruling class and the country class, who the country class, the ruling class, considers intellectually and socially incapable of understanding this world that we live in, navigating it, and being able to make these decisions for ourselves. And we were talking about this earlier, Kramer, and I've said it again at these town hall meetings, that this is why every single issue that we talk about it's a major issue. It's majorly sensitive. Why? Because the ruling class manages every part of our lives.
Yep.
Every part of our lives, the federal government has their tentacles in. They tax us for it. They make decisions about it. You name it, school, healthcare, everything. They have it. So everything becomes political. And then when an issue comes to the forefront, that the managerial class is working so hard to keep that control over this issue and then expand upon it, while the rest of us are, with every major issue, are looking at it thinking, this is our last chance. Right. This is our last chance to preserve our rights to self-government. So medical liberty and informed consent. You don't have the right to self-government. Liberty, gun rights, no rights to self-government, election integrity, energy policy, economic policy, the running of everything. They run it, they're mismanaging it, but they tell us that we're too dumb to do it. But I'm optimistic, Kramer, because I think people I have seen through, like you just, the example, I'll tie it all back now, like Black America, who realizes, hold on a second, you are mismanaging our lives. You're mismanaging the economy. You're mismanaging my freedom. You're mismanaging this beautiful system of a constitutional government. You're mismanaging it, and everybody knows it. And we're awake, and we're taking this country back. I can see it. I can feel it. I can hear it going on around me as I'm out every single day in talking with my constituencies.
Well, they're upset because they see that they're working their butts off, and how many billion just got voted on to be sent to a foreign nation again? Again, yeah. We can't build our roads. We can't build our bridges. They did an infrastructure bill, and only 9% of that money went towards actual infrastructure. Right? They name a bill and they lie to you about it. And then we've got congressmen like Jim Baird. They go to D.C. and they try to convince us that they're doing the right thing. Well, I didn't vote for that trashy Green New Deal bill. I didn't do that. I voted with my constituents. Then goes and authors a bill, Charles, that spends that money and then comes back to Indiana and says, hey, we're bringing economic development back to the state of Indiana.
Yeah. Like they're saving us money.
Right.
Like this is good for us. Like, no, that's our money and we want it back. And that bill you're referring to, 4824, is I think is going to end up being one of the death knells for him as a representative. That's horrific. And the way you explained it is exactly how it is. These representatives, these so-called conservatives, go and say, I didn't vote for that. That's big government. I didn't want. But as soon as it's passed, these lobbyists and lawyers get into their office. They've looked through that bill. They know how to get the money, and they encourage that representative to bring back economic development into their district by aligning with that monstrosity and using it to really what it ends up doing is benefiting their friends and the contractors and the lobbyists and the lawyers, all those that are politically connected around this new niche market that they've created, elite capture, what it's called. And what I keep telling people, and you brought up the vote on the independent line item for funding of Israel. It was a $14 billion bill. Why am I optimistic? Because that bill didn't pass. And why didn't it pass? Because there were 14, I think, strong conservative constitutionalist Republicans with a spine,
right,
that voted no. And I go everywhere and I say, we have to send them reinforcements. Do you know how hard that is for those 14 men and women? Because Marjorie Taylor Greene was one of them. And I think Lauren Boebert was one of them. You know how hard that is for them to stand up to that pressure every day, to show up to work where there are 425, 450.
Well, the big thing is, Charles, they're getting the path of these people's money. If not directly through bribes and corruption, through electoral support. Right? We just saw it happen this last week. The FEC filings just came out, and we looked at Jim Baird's filings, and what happened? He got $38,000. In the last quarter, he raised $38,000. $34,000 of it came from PACs and lobbyists. The 4th District is not supporting him. Why? Because he's owned. He's captured. I can say it. I know Jim Baird. I worked with Jim Baird. I can tell you from a long time, a long relationship, that's how this happens. And if the American people don't wake up, and I was on a podcast today and I was saying it, if you want change in D.C., if you want change of this corruption, you can't go with the people who have been going along and getting along with the corruption for the last 30, 40 years. Jim's only been there 6 years, but what has he already done? He's already joined these ranks, trying to convince us. My dad used to call it, he says, don't pee on my leg and try to convince me that it's raining. And that's what Jim Baird has been doing with this Green New Deal. I'm not going to vote for it. I'm with you people, and then take his hand, put it into our pockets, and rip the money out, and then bring it back to Indiana and say, hey, listen, look what I've done for you. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, and tell us that he saved us money.
Exactly.
And by the way, he reminds us he saved us money with the franked mail privileges that he has, where he's spending money to do it. And frankly, the Israeli vote is one of those bills where it's very divisive within the Republican Party. And I am not supporting Gaza. I'm not a sympathizer for Gaza. I'm not a sympathizer for violence, having been in it. We've talked about this. I'm capable of great violence. That's why I am peaceful and humble. And most men that are capable of great violence are the same way. But if it's a divisive issue because of the name Israel, but I keep telling people that if you want to take your country back, you have to be willing to stand up and be bold about some of these votes that are taken and about some of these agencies that you think are altruistic and are doing you good. Like the Department of Education. I tell people I want to defund it federally, and they lose their minds. Like, how could we defund the Department of Education? Well, the Department of Education is only 43 years old. So we'll do what we did 43 years ago. And I'm not saying that we don't put money into education. I'm just saying we don't send it to the federal government first, have them create this bureaucracy and then send it back to the states pennies on the dollar. But ladies and gentlemen, if you want change, which I know we all do, we all talk about it, you have to be willing to get behind someone that is going to do what they say they're going to do, that is going to actually take bold positions right now. One of them is saying that the United States should not be sending $14 billion to Israel right now. Right. If Congress wants to send money to anyone, they need to reduce taxes, reduce spending, and relieve this burden on the American taxpayer. Americans are struggling right now, and we want some relief. And we're not getting it. All they debate is a $14 billion to Israel, $200 billion to Ukraine. And they try to tell us it's in our best interest. These are our allies, Charlie. We need to support them. Or the incredible amounts of money that goes to welfare and all the other programs.
Well, look at what's happening right now in the sanctuary cities. Look at what's happening in the sanctuary cities. What are the residents of these sanctuary cities finally realizing? The true cost of what their virtue was, right? They were so virtuous when they said, hey, listen, we'll open up our arms. And then when the people came, and now they're realizing that there is no money. They've overpromised and underdelivered. Charles, we're going to take a break here. We're going to play your brand new commercial. And then when we come back, let's talk about this issue that Hawaii is doing, where the Supreme Court of Hawaii has now said that you do not have a constitutional right to bear arms in Hawaii because it's not in the state's constitution.
Who is Charles Bookwalter? Charles is a husband, father, entrepreneur, and former Green Beret. But most importantly, Charles Bookwalter is a constitutional conservative. Charles Bookwalter will work to close our borders, ensuring the safety and security of our nation. Charles will fight to secure your personal medical freedoms, giving you complete control over your own healthcare decisions. And Charles Bookwalter will continue his fight to secure our elections, ensuring every vote counts. On May 7th, you have a choice.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
Well, here we're back, and let's get started. We got a comment here that I think that you'll want to take a look at.
Kramer, let me just say first off that ad was good, man.
Oh, thank you.
Whoever did that, woo! Man, that's a good ad.
Thanks so much. Shen Sheridan wants to make a comment here. He says, Biden will resign by summer. First of all, what's your thought on that? Now, his second point, I think, is hilarious. They'll launch their next candidate at a Taylor Swift concert. Your thoughts?
Sorry, Kramer, I had a problem with my earpiece here. But he thinks that Biden will resign by next summer. Was that it?
Well, he thinks that Biden will resign at some point this summer, and then they're going to launch the next candidate during a Taylor Swift concert. You know, she's so involved with the campaign at this point. That's Shan Sheridan on Facebook.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've seen those stadiums that Taylor Swift can fill up, and you can't deny the fact that there are a lot of I think what Rush Limbaugh called uninformed voter, or the uninformed populace that would probably vote for whomever she said to vote for. I would say that's clearly an example. It possibly, here's my thoughts. Taylor Swift is a result of Project Mockingbird. That's what
I agree.
That's what it is. That she's actually not. I don't know. I hate to say it. People are going to hate me for this. I don't even know her. I don't know her abilities. I don't listen to any music or watch anything. I don't know how talented she is. But, you know, some people with limited talent get a lot of publicity merely because that's the narrative that the media wants to portray. So it's possible that that there's a handler in there somewhere telling her what to do. So.
Well, I think it was interesting. She, a year and a half ago, she got on to a stage and complained that George Soros had bought her whole catalog without ever asking for her permission or what she thought or whatever, and invested in her music. And then boom, all of a sudden, she's everywhere. She's everywhere.
Yep, there you go.
Those things don't happen by accident.
So there's the payoff.
Yep. Shut your mouth and do as you're told, and you'll have everything you want. Just be quiet. Yeah. Let's talk about, you talked earlier about these things that all come into play. You know, your ability to speak freely, your ability to have free and fair elections, your ability to exercise your rights, such as the Second Amendment. All of those circulate back around to having a free and fair government. Would you agree? Okay. So when we get to the issue of what happened in Hawaii, here in the last couple of days where they've ruled that the residents of Hawaii do not have a constitutional right to bear arms because there's no state constitutional right to bear arms. Would you like to jump in on that?
Yeah, this is. I've said that the people often ask me what the greatest threat to the country is right now, and I say apathy. Apathy is the greatest. We have immediate threats. The border is an immediate threat. War is an immediate threat. Inflation is an immediate threat. Apathy is the long-term threat that has been around probably from the beginning of time, or from the beginning of the founding, or maybe not quite the beginning, because back then everyone knew their rights. People were very in tune with their constitutional rights because they lived directly under tyranny that was much less than what we're facing right now. I mean, they were taxed to like under 10%. Here we're at 55. But the apathy results in people not understanding their constitutional rights or the Constitution or why it was designed. The Constitution was designed to protect our God-given rights that from government intervention. And unfortunately, the people in Hawaii think that the government is responsible for giving them their right. It's a complete 180 of the way this process was set up, the system was set up, and what our natural rights were. So the Second Amendment was a right that was established that was very short, very clear, and very easy to read. And by the way, bear means carry. So it was, or carry in some way, or carry along with you, because frankly, I think that you should be able to own a tank, I think, if you really want to. Look, hey, in the Civil War, and in the Revolutionary War, I can't remember which war it was, the United States government had to borrow cannons from private people because they didn't have enough. They were privately owned weaponry.
In fact, in Savannah, Georgia, there is a cannon that's on display that George Washington loaned to the city of Savannah to protect themselves from the British. Think about that. George Washington loaned the city a cannon.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think that's a travesty that in Hawaii, those people and the Supreme Court, if that goes to show you, tell you anything, that the Supreme Court in Hawaii is lost, the politicians are lost, and that's why we're seeing this big movement right now, because there's so many of us patriots that understand the Constitution, have read it, and we don't need a managerial class to determine that what it is or to explain it to us. Here's another example of this misunderstanding. Like you brought up George Washington owning the cannon. Well, Indiana General Assembly just made it okay for assemblymen to carry a firearm in the Capitol. And while I think that's fine, that's okay, it should extend to everybody.
Exactly. Why can't I protect myself when I'm at the Capitol or on the Capitol grounds? Do I have to rely on the police to protect me when I'm on Capitol grounds, is what they're telling me.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I know threat in the fact that it's not okay when they say George Washington, and I can't speak for President Washington, but my guess, he wasn't thinking, hey, only former presidents or only politicians can own a cannon. The rest of you morons aren't sophisticated enough to own a cannon. Only I can. It's the same thing as these Indiana General Assemblymen who say, hey, only we're responsible enough to carry a firearm in the Capitol. The rest of you knuckleheads can't be responsible enough to do it. Man, forget, I have more training than all of them put together.
Exactly. And what's sad about it, Charles, is that they're so-called conservatives. They're Republicans. They're the ones that are supposed to be on our side, and they're showing their hand that they're afraid of the people. That's who they're afraid of. Well, we're afraid of the crazies. That's a completely different issue. I can't control crazy. You can't control crazy. We're all surrounded by crazy. But I should be, as an American citizen, I have the right to walk in anywhere I want to go with my firearm for my protection. It's asinine that we keep going down this path and talking about this thing. Go ahead real quick. Then I want to jump in with what Putin is saying here.
Yeah, I do. I do go everywhere with my firearm, and I encourage everyone to do the same thing. And by the way, you're absolutely right. They are afraid right now. Yep. This is why you're seeing this suppression of voting. This is why you're seeing this election. That's why they're expanding voting that they did during COVID. That's what COVID was all about, is their fear of the country class rising up. That's why they want to go to war with Russia. That's why they want to go to war with Iran. And I remind everyone what I've been saying for the longest time. The reason they want to go to war is because Americans will forget about the border. Americans will forget about medical integrity and medical liberty. Americans will forget about high inflation and the mismanagement of the economy. American will forget about your gun rights. Yep. You'll forget about all these issues that are you'll forget about the Green New Deal energy scam as they tell us they're going to build trucks, but as they're bombing countries, creating all this CO2 and pollution all over. A war rallies the country behind the leader. The Democrats would get elected again. All these super important issues that are so important to us right now will be swept under the rug. And anybody that is anti-war will cower, because you cannot be anti-war at a time when the country is at war, or you will be labeled as unpatriotic. And some of the strongest patriots in the history of America have folded to that accusation. Yep. So that's why they want war. That's why, because they're afraid of everyone. But I think, and I pray to God, that it's different this time, and that people like Tucker, this is one of the greatest things that Tucker has done, is through that strength that he has to go there and take on those risks, he is exposing the managerial class for what they are and this rush to war. And I think a lot of Americans see it. And even if America want to, this is what's dangerous about going to war right now, is because if they can't get the support of the American population, America is in a terrible, terrible position.
Well, it's interesting that here in the last few days, when this was first announced that Tucker was going to do this interview, I think it's amazing the number of Republicans, in particular Bill Kristol, who said he should not be allowed to be allowed back into the nation, that Tucker Carlson, as an American citizen, can't come into the country. Meanwhile, they're supporting what's going on down at the border. Right? And American citizens can't speak, can't go have a conversation with another human on the face of the earth. And why? It's not because Vladimir Putin is a bully. It's not because he's a dictator. He may be all those things. More importantly, what he may learn from Putin puts them at risk. And that's what this is all about. They're afraid of us finding out what they've done and what they're doing.
No doubt about it. Like I say, exposing the managerial class. Yep. And frankly, Bill Kristol is a neocon war hawk. Yep. And I hope people have made it, those people that switched over from Tucker Carlson to watch us tonight, because that's how important this podcast, this town hall meeting is. I hope that they take this 1 point home. Go to YouTube and look up Scott Horton versus Bill Kristol and watch that debate between those two. And you will see this. Scott Horton is started antiwar.com. He's got a really big website. I don't agree with everything he does, but man, this guy is smart. He's interviewed thousands of people, and he does a debate with Bill Kristol and exposes Bill Kristol for exactly what he is, which is a war hawk. And I was watching some of the interviews leading up to the Tucker Carlson interview. And one reporter said, he said, is it even legal for a reporter to go over and interview a leader of a country? And he said that we're basically at war with. And I thought, well, at least you're admitting that what the United States is doing is pretty much going to war with Russia without declaring it. Right? So at least you're admitting that Lend-Lease, that giving Ukraine all these weapons, that financing it, that Russia pretty much sees this as war. And you would too if someone was doing it to the United States. So thank you for inadvertently admitting that this is pretty much going to war without Congress declaring it. And that's a shame. And that's something that I would do in Congress is this is why I wouldn't vote for these funding bills, because war has not been declared.
Right.
And if
we've got to stop allowing the president to, we got to stop allowing the president just to go drop bombs on somebody because they're angry at him, or because some conglomerate, some corporate conglomerate, they benefit from it, because that's what we find out time and time again, right? That's why they're called banana republics, is because the banana companies went in and overthrew the government of South American countries so they could have control of the banana population. That's how we got here. Charles, we're going to take a break here real quick. When we come back, let's talk about what Putin is saying here on Tucker. It's interesting. The notes I'm getting in is that Poland and U.S. have mercenaries in Ukraine right now. This is a claim by Putin. He believes that the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, did not offer any proof. And the U.S. is making a grave mistake to use the U.S. dollar strategically. The U.S. dollar is in third-party transactions right now in Russia used to be 50%. They're now approximately 13%. That he's saying that the U.S. is cutting themselves off. When we come back, we'll jump into that and see what he has to say with Tucker here. Stand by.
Our nation is at a breaking point. Out-of-control crime, runaway inflation, political corruption, and politicians who talk a big game but just can't seem to deliver. Charles Bookwalter is a proven conservative leader, a man of faith and conviction, a former Green Beret. Charles Bookwalter offered his life in the service of his nation once before and is now willing to serve again. To learn more about Charles Bookwalter and his vision for the state of Indiana and this great nation, visit bookwalterforcongress.com. That's bookwalterforcongress.com. Donate, volunteer, join in, stand up, and fight back.
Okay, we are back live on the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. If you've got questions or comments, please drop them into the comment section of whatever platform you're on, and we'll bring them up as we're going through. We have a question here from Cynthia Groves Bookwalter. I'll bet she's in the family. Do you think that if it is not already one of the states that is calling for a convention of states, Article 5, that you would support that from Washington?
I've been asked that question a lot of times, and the Convention of States is a good idea and is built into the Constitution. But it can be a double-edged sword. This is what people don't realize for two reasons. One, unless you have, it's like any issue, unless you have a lot of support for the Convention of States, you're just wasting your time and energy getting something done that's not going to get done.
Because it takes two-thirds of the states to agree to it.
Right.
State legislatures.
So it's a lot of work.
Right.
And then here's the other thing that one side looks at. When you open up a convention of states that can change the Constitution and change these rules, and you do it for a single issue or something like that, I can't remember the exact wording of it, but you expose us and expose the government as being very vulnerable.
Well, my understanding is that if you open it up, so for example, if they wanted to insert, they wanted to insert an amendment to make abortion illegal, right? That would also open up the First and Second Amendment to being amended as well at the same time.
Right.
And so they could say, okay, you can only have these kind of guns and you can only speak these kind of things, and those would all be compromises to be able to get their abortion thing in. It's not worth it. Would you agree?
That's right.
That's what I've been afraid of.
It can be. It sounds great,
right?
But it can be used to take away the Second Amendment or take away the First Amendment or something like that. So it can be very dangerous. And as we all know, all they talk about, or at least the 1990s 2000 playbook or the Tip O'Neill Ronald Reagan playbook, is meet in the middle and scratch each other's back and give a little here and there. And if that happened during the Convention of States, we would lose our right.
Devastation.
That would be a fear of mine.
Well, let's jump in here real quick and see what Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin are talking about. See if we got this going on here. There we go. Should be going. Oh, it's not. Where's the audio? There it is. Oh, there it is. I got it turned off in the wrong place. Here we go.
Putting an end to this, which clearly isn't helping his country or the world. Can he do that, do you think?
Ну, а почему нет? Он же Why not? He considers himself head of state. He won the elections. Although we believe in Russia that the coup d'etat is the primary source of power for everything that happened after 2014. And in this sense, even today, government is flawed. But he considers himself the president, and he is recognized by the United States, all of Europe, and practically the rest.
By the way, here they're talking about Zelensky. For those of you who don't know, Zelensky was installed. No different than Joe Biden. In 2014, the Obama State Department, including Victoria Nuland and others, helped with the overthrow of a democratically elected government in Ukraine and installed Zelensky, and that's what he's talking about here.
The Rada. He still heads the presidential faction in the Rada, the country's parliament. He still sits there. He even put his preliminary signature on the document I am telling you about. But then he publicly stated to the whole world, we were ready to sign this document, but Mr. Johnson, then the Prime Minister of Great Britain, came and dissuaded us from doing this, saying it was better to fight Russia. They would give everything needed for us to return what was lost during the clashes with Russia. And we agreed with this proposal. Look, his statement has been published. He said it publicly. Can they return to this or not? The question is, do they want it or not? Further on, President of Ukraine issued a decree prohibiting negotiations with us. Let him cancel that decree, and that's it. We have never refused negotiations, indeed. We hear all the time, is Russia ready? Yes, we have not refused. It was them who publicly refused. Well, let him cancel his decree and enter into negotiations. We have never refused.
Listen to that.
And the fact that they...
I think that's important right there, Charles, because what he's saying is that they've offered for negotiations to end this, and the West and Zelensky say no. They just want the money and want to fight.
Yes.
So what you've been saying is...
And to go on a conspiratorial route, they want the death, Kramer. If you believe this is a spiritual battle we live here on life, there are people that want to depopulate the earth, and it's not a conspiracy. They've been talking about it for the longest time. Eugenics was a big thing. I mean, that's what Hitler was all about, and Margaret Sanger and all these things. There are people that don't care about the loss of life, and think about that travesty for a moment. Yep. 500,000 lives. Like Tucker said, this has been the largest this has been a human disaster and the largest depopulation of the largest country in Europe.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. It's a travesty. And you brought up that issue about Zelensky being installed. How many times have I talked about this? So first of all, sorry, I don't know if you want to pause this. I'm going off on something.
No, go ahead.
Tucker said, I took some notes about it, but Tucker pretty much said that, this reshaped the economic and military alliances throughout the European Union. Okay. Well, this is no different. And I encourage everyone to go watch John Mearsheimer's YouTube video about Ukraine. But John Mearsheimer said the same thing. He's from the University of Chicago. He's a very bright man that's been studying this for a long time and other foreign conflicts. He said the same thing a long time ago. The deep cause of this issue is the aim, quote, the aim of the U.S. and its Euro allies to peel Ukraine away from the Soviet orbit and incorporate it into the West, both economically and militarily. Economically, through the EU expansion, and they've proven this. They've done votes in 2015 about should Ukraine join the EU or the Russian Confederation. And not surprisingly, the countries on the west of Ukraine chose EU, and the countries to the east chose the Russian economic alliances. And the same when they did a poll about NATO expansion. The cities and the population in the west of Ukraine wanted to go with the NATO alliance, and the cities and the countries and the population in the east of Ukraine did not. But what Mearsheimer talks about, the key element, the third key element that Mearsheimer brings up that Tucker did not bring up, or at least I didn't hear yet, was at the United States promoting democracy through regime change for the last 100 years. And you talked about the installation of Zelensky. The same thing happened in 1953 in Iran when Kermit Roosevelt from the CIA went to Tehran and they overthrew Mossadegh, a democratically elected leader. Why? Because of the economic issues where the people wanted to have economic autonomy within Iran, and the powers that be and the West wanted them aligned with Europe so that they could take their oil. And so the CIA, through regime change, overturned Mossadegh. They propped up the Shah of Iran, again, who was a brutal dictator who everyone liked. They killed thousands of people. Now, not 500,000, but they killed thousands of people in Iran. Mossadegh was homebound and died homebound. And in the early 2000s, Madeleine Albright admitted to and apologized for the CIA overthrowing Iran. Well, that overthrow of Iran in 1953 led to the uprising of a theocracy in the Ayatollah Khomeini, and that's why we have so many times, so many things. These so-called these so-called experts in foreign policy act like the war in Ukraine started 2 years ago. When Russia invaded Ukraine, and these so-called smart people think we need to go bomb Iran because they think that history started 10 years ago, right, or 5 years ago, or since Iran has been backing these extremists that are attacking America. They don't go back to 1953 when the United States overthrew their country. Well, what do you think we would think about another country if 50 years ago they sent their black ops into the United States? Yep. They overthrew our democratically elected leader. Thousands of people were killed and imprisoned, and we've never been the same since. You don't think we would be upset?
Well, I know we were upset, and the only person that died was Ashley Babbitt. I know that we were upset when that happened to us because they did the exact same thing to us in 2020, Charles. That's what happened. The CIA did the exact same thing here in the United States that they've done in every South American country. The only country that they haven't messed with is Mexico. But every other South American country, at some point or another, has been flipped by the CIA for one reason or another, whether it be drugs, whether it be access, whether they're mineral resources, or they just didn't like the guys. Yeah. And we've got to wrap our heads around that. And let me jump in and say this. And the reason I'm supporting you is because when we first talked, this conversation is what we had, and it was one of those things that something's got to happen. Jim Baird ain't doing it. They will not stand up against the machine, Charles. Speak to that. Speak why you got in, why it's so important, why people like yourself get up here and fight for these things, because if you don't, what happens in other lands, it starts here in Congress.
That's right. 500,000 human beings have died in the last 2 years in the Ukrainian conflict. What do you think is going to happen if we go, and this conflict between United States and Russia, who do you think Iran is going to side with? We already know that Iran and China and Russia are selling oil to one another. They are working together. They are allies. They're the BRICS nations have an economic powerhouse that's going on because they are so upset with the United States intervening in their countries, overthrowing their neighbors, and ruling through a black ops program. It doesn't take a genius to think that when the United States talks about, and this is what Mearsheimer says, talks about democracy abroad and promoting democracy abroad, then Beijing and Tehran and Moscow see that as a threat, because that means they want to topple their regime. And we have been warned against this. Our forefathers saw this. If you listen to that Tucker interview, the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so, Putin talks about the history going back to the 13th century or before, something that our managerial class has no concept of. They've never looked into this. They have no idea. It just goes to show how how much is behind all these decisions from their perspective, these political and so many changing borders and all these things that Americans don't understand. But you go ask a Democrat or Republican in a city in Indiana, and they're going to tell you, oh, well, we need to go bomb Ukraine. We need to go bomb Russia.
Yep.
Well, you have no idea of the history and how convoluted it is, but they want to go bomb Ukraine or Iran because of something that happened last year.
Right.
It's terribly myopic. It's terribly nearsighted. And we've got to have people in there with a level head. And again, I keep saying, reinforcing those few that are out there right now and helping them stand up against this cabal of people that are not just running the United States, but are running the world. Yep. They're a globalist cabal. They've infiltrated our government. And if Jim Baird isn't fighting against it, then he is complicit in it. And someone with the backbone has to go there and stand up to it.
Well, someone who can't be owned, Charles, that's the thing. Right, you and I have had this conversation time and time again. It's so easy to say you're going to go to D.C. and make change, and then you get there, and then they get you, right? They capture you. They've got something on you, and your plan is simple. You're not going there to live. Talk about that.
Yeah, I've made it clear. I'm not going to go to Washington, D.C. I'm not a Washington, D.C. socialite. I will not spend my time at their parties. I will not go out and take advantage of whatever they do out there. That's not my intentions. I will come home to my family. I'll continue doing town halls. I intend to set up multiple offices in the 4th Congressional District and stay close to the people. That's what keeps you grounded. That's why we're here. That's why we're representing the 4th District to D.C., not Washington, D.C., to the 4th District. And that's what we need to encourage in our representatives. I'll never encourage you to call my office and talk to an 18-year-old. Right. I will encourage you to go find me at my office hours that I'll be holding throughout the district, because you can come talk to me, because I'm not spending my time in Washington, D.C. The one joy I see that if I have to spend time in there is going to the Library of Congress. And actually, it was Putin pulling out those old documents that made me think about that. Imagine just think of the treasure trove of documents and information that we have at the Library of Congress that really curious people like me want to go take advantage of, when the rest of these people are either too tired, too old, or not interested and curious and learning more about the background of these important issues. They're socialites, they're political opportunists, or they're just toadies to Republican leadership.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I went down to the border this last weekend for the convoy that went down there to see what was going on. And on the way back, started to listen to a podcast or a book on Audible. The what is it called? The politically incorrect guide to American history. Mm-hmm. And it is amazing. I'm a history buff. I love history. But what I learned was some of the things that I thought were true or not true, or had been leaned in a certain way to make me believe something. It was truthful, but I believed something completely different based on what I thought I knew. And it's interesting to listen to, what was his name? Was it Rhodes? Tom Woods, that how he wrote this and how he explains how it is, and how, Charles, the people have to be aware of their history, just like Vladimir Putin is of his. And it changes the context in the way that you look at not only yourself and your rights, but your nation on a whole against the rest of the world. And we're a new nation. We don't have 1,000 years of history. Right? But we should look through the 400 years of history we have and look at that and say how far we've come and where we are and where we're headed if we don't get off the path that we're on. And what scares me is that men like Jim Baird and others go along to get along. They're fine with complacency. It benefits them. Yeah. So when you go to D.C., I guess what I was going to say is when you go to D.C., we've been talked to a couple of times about this, that your path isn't to go there and to be a legislator in the sense of creating tons and tons of laws with your name on them that restrict people's rights. Talk about that.
Yeah, that's right. And I've kind of been called on this a little bit. but I would be a legislator. So I would be working on legislation, but the legislation, my intention is not to go there to create legislation to modify people's behavior or create bureaucracies like Jim Barrett is going to do through the Carbon Sequestration Collaboration Act, or the other I can't remember, but it's putting the Catalytic Converter Act that he wants to do. The intention is to go join the 20 or so patriots out there and help them work on the projects they're already working on to defund and delegislate these terrible laws that are already in place. There's already somebody there that is proposing an amendment to defund the Department of Education. Boom. I go help them work on it. Let's face it, I'll be a freshman legislator. I won't have a lot of committee assignments and responsibilities. But I can go help Matt Gaetz work on defunding the Department of Education. I can help Thomas Massie work on the Prime Act or these other pieces of legislation that actually give us more freedom. And I'll tell you right now, I had this in my head and I want to go back to it because it's so important. We have good leadership in the Republican Party. It's that people like Jim Baird don't support these people. I can't imagine that Jim Baird would support a guy like Pat Buchanan, that in 1989 or 91, when the USSR was disbanded, we supported NATO because our managerial class told us that we had to support NATO to counter the USSR and to counter their influence throughout the world and get rid of communism. When 91, when the wall fell, Pat Buchanan, the great paleo-conservative Pat Buchanan, whom, by the way, Tom Woods, I think, worked for, was a big supporter of Pat Buchanan. Pat Buchanan said, okay, America, Republican Party, you told us we were doing this for NATO to get rid of USSR. We won. It's done. Close down NATO, stop threatening Russia, stop threatening anyone else throughout the world. Let's bring our troops home. Let's reduce the size of our military, decrease taxes. You told us that's what you were going to do when you started all. And look where we are. John Mearsheimer makes a point that that the West is responsible for what's going on in Ukraine because of constantly pushing that NATO border to the doorstep of Russia. When Putin said very clearly in the 90s, you do this and we're not going to allow it. Let's see, I've got two quotes in that. Putin said, Georgia, because remember Georgia and Ukraine went to Georgia and Ukraine becoming part of NATO is a direct threat to Russia. Yep. He said that in the 90s. And Russia's foreign minister after the Bucharest summit in 2008, Russia's deputy foreign minister said Georgia's and Ukraine's membership in the alliance is a huge strategic mistake. Will have most serious consequences for pan-European security. But Americans don't know this.
Right.
They don't know this. They say, oh, well, Putin invaded Ukraine. Right. We've got to go kill everybody. It's just complete insanity. And the people think that are either uninformed or they're psychopaths, in my estimation.
We've got, I don't know what's going on here, Charles. We got breaking news, Biden to address the nation in moments. Do you want to go live with that and stick around and comment on it?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do in the meantime. I'm going to set this up. I got to get some stuff.
I'm afraid there's going to be some kind of war declaration or something.
We shall see. Let's hope not. Let's do this. I'm going to put, we're going to put the Putin thing up here. I'm going to go back to Tucker. We'll go back to Tucker here.
No, maybe Biden killed Tucker.
The American system of self.
That's the wrong one. Let's go here. Let me turn this back on so we hear it.
What is it then?
But are you suggesting that he was working for the U.S. government or NATO, or he was just a reporter who was given material he wasn't supposed to have? Those seem like very different.
He had to come back. It's going on now. I'm trying to see if I can get it up here. Let me see if I can get this here. Charles, talk about what your concerns are. If Biden comes out tonight, what does this do for us? If it's something...
What do you mean? If he comes out and has some kind of boots on the ground?
Right.
declaration? Well, first of all, we already have boots on the ground. Putin's right. It's not just mercenaries.
Right.
Do you remember when back in I don't know what it was, probably 2018 or so, like 5 Green Berets were killed in Africa, and I remember everyone being incensed. They were like, Green Berets in Africa? We're not in war with Africa. I'm like, where have you guys have you been? There's Green Berets all over the world. And so the same thing is happening in Ukraine. That's what we do, is we advise and assist.
Well, it's nothing like what we thought it was going to be. It's him addressing the fact that he's too old and too feeble to be tried for having confidential documents. I don't know if you know that's what they said today. So they came out and they said, hey, listen, he didn't mean to do it. He's old and he's feeble. But the most important information that came out today is that during his deposition, when they investigated him, I don't know if you caught on to any of this, Biden couldn't tell the years. He couldn't tell the investigator the years that he was vice president. That's what's so damaging in this report. Not the fact that he had the confidential documents, but the fact that he can't tell you the year that his son died. The one he's always screaming and yelling about. Remember where
died in Iraq?
Yeah, died in Iraq.
Yeah,
he doesn't remember what year
that.
that happened. So
Yeah,
he's now on TV talking about that. So I'm not going to go to that.
I don't even know what you think about that, Kramer. I'm not even sure that this is in itself a scam, that it's possible that Joe Biden is actually has full capabilities and capacity, and this is all faked. I don't know at this point, but that's I can't even believe.
Think about that. Let's go back to what you just said, though. This is the nation that we live in right now. The nation that we live in, Charles, is one where we can't tell whether our president is faking being an idiot or he's a real idiot. We can't tell.
Right. Yep.
That's where we're in.
And he just admitted it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's.
And I feel like, I'm sorry to switch. We'll go back to this. I want to make a point here, because I've railed on and on about war and these things, and it gets back to what I've told you, what I said earlier about being capable of great violence, but being peaceful. And
when you say that, explain that for some people that are just joining. Why do you say that you're capable of great violence?
Because I have it within me. I have a spirit within me that I can do things. I'm a protector. I'm meant to be.
But more specifically, you're a trained Green Beret. You've been taught in the methods and the methodology of delivering great violence by the U.S. government.
But before I was a Green Beret, I was delivering great violence to boys in high school. Yeah, I mean, and in college, if someone squared off on me, I would deliver some great violence to them too. And although a blue belt in jiu-jitsu isn't great, it's better than most people, and I can twist them up and deliver some violence to them too. But I do it coming from a position of peace. And here's why. Because we have been at these proxy wars and these little skirmishes for so long that it has weakened us. And Americans think that we're still so strong that we can just go pick a fight with anybody. But what I'm offering, what I'm advocating to people is, I'm not afraid to fight. I've fought my whole life, and I fought as a Green Beret, and I can fight again. What I'm telling you is that when you pull me into a fight, I'm going to do what the Romans did to Carthage. I'm going to salt your fields. You kill one of mine, I'm going to kill 1,000 of yours. I'll kill 10,000 of yours. I'll crush you. We'll leave you. We will flatten everything. We'll kill everything. So those of you that flee to the woods will die of starvation because we've taken everything. That's the position that you have to take in war. That's why you shouldn't go to war. Right. That's why men have to suppress this naturally occurring
romantic desire. We're told that it's romantic to go into battle and fight.
Yeah. Yes. And it's not. It's destructive. Right. It's terrible. It's brutal. It leads to men suffering for the rest of their lives when they do some of the things to other men that are trying to kill you. So I don't want to give the impression that if the United States was threatened If someone invaded the United States, I would be the first one to go straight to the battlefield and fight. I still have a few years of fight left in me. I still train. I still work out. I can still fight, and I would. What I'm suggesting is we can't do these little weak skirmishes anymore where we're not fully committed, where we get people killed, or it leads to the death of 500 million or 500,000 other people. That we can't do that. That makes us weak.
And what we find out, Charles, time and time again, is that these skirmishes that we're in aren't because there's a threat to us. It's because there's a threat to some corporation, or that there's a threat to some government agency that had another operation that went sideways, and now they need to cover it up. That's what Benghazi was all about, right? So let's do this. Let's take a commercial break, and then we're going to come back and wrap up. What we talked about earlier that we're going to talk about and we haven't gotten to yet, and I think it's important, is when people say they see what's going on in the world, and they see that you're jumping up and you're running for office, and they say, well, I don't have any faith in the system. It's because they're not a part of the system. If they were a precinct committeeman, or if they were a delegate, or if they were involved with the process where they could have their hands on the action as it's happening, as opposed to reporting about it later, that they would feel much more involved. Would you agree? We're going to talk about that when we come back next.
Who is Charles Bookwalter? Charles is a husband, father, entrepreneur, and former Green Beret. But most importantly, Charles Bookwalter is a constitutional conservative. Charles Bookwalter will work to close our borders, ensuring the safety and security of our nation. Charles will fight to secure your personal medical freedoms, giving you complete control over your own healthcare decisions. And Charles Bookwalter will continue his fight to secure our elections, ensuring every vote counts. On May 7th, you have a choice.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
You're right. That is a great ad. Molly Hemingway, who's an author, she's a journalist, she is on Fox News quite a bit, was recently in a hearing where she made some points about the situation that our country is in and how everything is, I wouldn't say dire, but it's in bad shape. And I thought it was interesting to bring this up tonight, especially with the conversations that we've had over the last few months about the importance of getting involved, that you can't complain about your elections if the only thing you do is show up to vote. You've got to get involved. Molly Hemingway. We'll come back and talk about this comments after. Well, maybe. Let's see if I can do it this way. Is that it? Nope. Hold on a second here. I've got the wrong thing in there. Let me come back over here. We'll come back to Charles here. See if I can get this fixed.
You can work on that. I'll just say that that's the way our system was designed. Our founders said this very clearly. Our system was designed for the people to be a part of the government. It wasn't until the early 1900s and the progressive era where a group came in and convinced the average person that a managerial class is the way that our government should be run. They're smarter than us. They've got some silly degree or something, and the world's too complex for us knuckleheads in rural America to run our own lives. But that's not the way this system was designed. This system is pretty easy. It's pretty easy to read the Constitution and understand these concepts of self-government. And if you don't have that up, I'll get right into it.
Bring it up. Here we go. So this is Molly Hemingway.
The American system of self-governance is under attack. Instead of an election day where everyone votes at the same time and with the same full set of information, votes are counted quickly, and everyone promptly knows and trusts the outcome, we now have lengthy election seasons that can last months prior to and even after Election Day. The situation is so absurd that we have presidential and gubernatorial debates weeks after some people have already voted. Instead of having total security and a verifiable chain of custody for ballots being issued, cast, and counted, we flood addresses across the country with tens of millions of unsupervised mail-in ballots months ahead of elections, frequently to locations from which voters, if they're even alive, have long since moved. Instead of having election administration that is rigorously nonpartisan and impartial under the law, we have allowed the private takeover of government election offices by partisan oligarchs and their armies of activists who use those offices and their authorities to tilt the election toward favored candidates.
Okay, so what she's already said there, you've been fighting for the last several years, in particular in Boone County. Charles, go into detail about where we are in Boone County. Just in Boone County, with the fight you've had and what you've been told, that you're a problem for advocating for open and free elections.
Yeah, I mean, essentially what she's saying, like in our case, it's an election board that's made up of a clerk and two judges, a Democrat and a Republican, and they're all on the same page. And the page is not on that of the people. They make decisions behind closed doors. They will not listen to public comment. They will not take questions in a 6 month or 8 month time frame when we try to get it in front of them and present to them information as a why. And by the way, the Indiana state constitution says the elections are run by the people, not the election board and not the government. They're run by the people. Moreover, the Indiana state constitution says election will occur on the second Tuesday of November. It doesn't say a month, and it doesn't say any other. It also says on a ballot. And according to Black's Law Dictionary, taken at the time that the Constitution is written, a ballot is a piece of paper. Yep. So our Constitution says the way our elections are supposed, and there's been no amendments, no changes, so any laws that were passed were unconstitutional. And as a group, we're going to all of them saying, we want this done differently. We want to be on paper ballots. We want some transparency in this system. And they refuse to do it. They are very untransparent and unhelpful. We've made 130 plus, call them FOIA requests. They're called FOIA. They're called something different at that level. And not one. We have not gotten one. It's been almost 2 years since we've done this. So,
well, and why are they hiding it? Right? There's only two reasons to hide something. Either they're inept or they're corrupt. There's no other reason, right?
Well, yes, and in my estimation, yes. And considering the fact that I went to the audit of the microvote machines that we use here in Indiana, I won't even ask. The clerk didn't even do the audit of the machines. The former clerk did the audit of the machines. And take a guess who the former clerk works for now. The current? The company that we buy these machines from. So a sales rep came in and did the audit. The sales rep has full access to the clerk, being the former clerk, and the election board. It's completely a conflict of interest. It clearly goes to show how these politicians are captured. They go from a political office to either the regulatory authority or a business who they used to regulate, and they go work for them, and they go back and forth. And as citizens, it reeks, it stinks, and we don't want anything to have to do with it. And so in that situation, with not getting all the information, it makes us speculate, and I speculate it's corruption, not incompetence, because the former clerk is working for the company now. And it scares me, Kramer, because these machines are throughout Indiana, and they're used throughout my entire congressional district. And within that audit, I asked, how are these machines programmed with all the ballots and all the names of the ballots and counted? And the sales rep for Microvote, not the clerk, told me, oh, the company does it. The company does it from their corporate headquarters in Boone County, Indiana, and they send a thumb drive to the clerk. So when we say that this computer, this box, could conceivably flip every 10th vote from Bookwalter to Baird, it's not a stretch of the imagination to think about it. And Miss Hemingway is clearly demonstrating and showing the amounts of money that go into these companies by these oligarchs. That the idea to think that that's not possible is
childish. It's childish. It's childish to think that the world doesn't operate that way. Let's follow up with Molly here and what she has to say, because what she says here it hits on so many levels. And in this 3.5 minutes, she just nailed the problems that are going on, not just in our election system, but in our country as a whole.
Instead of voters being able to vote for the candidate of their choice, powerful interests backed by wealthy oligarchs are working to remove the most popular candidate and the ruling party's chief opponent from the ballot in a move reminiscent of Soviet Russia.
We were going through that today. That's what the Supreme Court was hearing today. Whether Trump can be on a ballot because somebody, a Secretary of State, has decided as a dictator that this person can't be a part of the electoral process.
Banana Republic, Kramer.
100%.
A banana republic. That's where we are.
Instead of the top candidates chosen by the people being able to fully engage in a vigorous campaign heading into an election, we have one side actively attempting to throw its opponent in prison and bankrupt his family. Again, reminiscent of Soviet Russia.
And when you say it so succinctly, she's spelling out the lowest common denominator of what's going on. She's not placing blame. She's just saying, this is what's happening. This is where we are in our nation, Charles. This is why you're running, right?
This is why we're running. Because this managerial class has mismanaged everything. And it was never intended to be that way. And we are capable of doing these things on our own at the county level, at the state level. You know, the reason that that these states and counties use these voting machines is because the federal government gives them all this money through the HAVA Act, the Help America Vote Act. Indiana this year got $2 million that they distribute through the counties. And it's the only way these counties can afford to buy new machines and keep up with the software and the upkeep of these machines. Yep. And if the federal government wasn't taking our money or pruning it off, creating a hidden tax of inflation, if they weren't taking our money and giving it to these states, and the states did not have the money, the next day, the clerk would go back to paper ballots because they're so much less expensive, which would encourage the public to get involved again, what we're talking about. There would be volunteers and poll workers. You and I saw it at the Iowa straw poll. We saw the amount of enthusiasm and volunteering that occurred, but
in real time.
Don't want that. They don't want us engaged in this process. Then that's why you have to get engaged. That's why you must do it. And now is the time to do it. We don't have much more time. This is only going to get worse.
Charles, I think it's interesting that what we saw in Iowa is that when there was a problem, our room didn't have a captain or the leader of the room had not shown up. And so a citizen stepped up, said what the process was, and there was an election in that room to elect a leader in that room in real time. We saw it happen. Never saw that happen before in my life. But that shows you how fast the system can move and how effective it can be when just the people are involved and not politics or politicians. It was the people, and they all wanted to get out of there fast. Right? They didn't want to be there all night going through this process. So they were moving to get it done. The other thing that comes into mind, and you were talking about the deal with getting involved, is that if we don't get involved, we don't have skin in the game, then when it doesn't go our way, we're not as apt to get upset. And that's kind of what they want. Would you agree? Is that they just want us apathetic to the entire situation?
Yeah, I guess so. I had never really thought about it like that. I had never really thought that if you don't have skin in the game, you're not gonna, get upset if you don't win or you don't get your goal accomplished. I never thought about that. When I think of it, I think about this quote I've just looked up by Plato: the penalty good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. Yep. That's what's happening. That's the punishment that we are receiving right now as apathetic Americans, is that we are being ruled by evil men and women. And it is clear as day. And if you want to change that, then you had better register to vote. You need to run for precinct committeeman or state delegate and have some responsibility and skin in the game. And I can't be more clear. Now is the time to do this. We remember what I said earlier, that every issue becomes so important that they're just trying to maintain their that's what I saw when we're fighting the election division. They're just struggling to maintain their grip on the power. Whereas the citizens, we're looking at it like this is the last thing we have to hold on to our rights to self-preservation. And it's only getting worse. And at some point, this is going to break. In my estimation, this system is already broken because people aren't involved. We have a chance in the next 1, 2, 3 election cycles to bring this back for our progeny. Otherwise, our progeny are going to live in a world that we don't recognize at all.
We'll be a slave nation. A slave nation. A slave to the government, a slave to those in power. I'm going to bash on Jim Baird one more time. And the reason I'm going to jump on him is because when COVID started and I called his office, I got nothing. I said, hey, listen, they're closing us down. What can we do? Nope, nothing. Right? We've got this election issue. And Jim Baird has yet to say anything about the elections. We know that there's problems. We know that there's cheating. We know that there's fraud. We know that there's election interference. We know all those things are going on. And instead of doing something about the vote and ensuring that we believe that the votes are pure, he's over here trying to get numbers printed on a catalytic converter. Is he serious? I mean, that's the question I have to ask. Is that the biggest issue in our lives today? When people are talking about the border and inflation and election integrity, what is Baird talking about? Catalytic converters.
And that is the difference between people that desire legacy over liberty. And that is why when people talk about a legislative agenda, I am not desirous of a legacy that has my name on it. I am desirous for to achieve freedom in our lifetime, liberty in our lifetime, and liberty over legacy. And I am out, frankly, in my own county, fighting for election integrity, and recruiting and training and working to get good people elected to office. And I'm throughout the rest of the 4th Congressional District in these counties, helping them fight these fights that Jim Baird is the spearhead of, this Green New Deal energy scam, fighting against carbon sequestration projects up in the north, solar farms all over the place, wind farms that are trying to go in multiple counties. And I'm showing up at these commissioners and planning and BZA meetings, pounding my fist on the table, saying that this is a scam. None of it would be possible without our taxpayer dollars, which is the initiation of property rights starts with our.
Well, that's what was funny, Charles. That's what cracks me up. As soon as you start to jump into this conversation, they go, whoa. Don't you believe in personal property rights?
Yeah. It's so disingenuous to not admit that personal property rights starts with the first dollar that I own that they've taken to give into these companies through subsidies.
Yep.
Property rights begins with our taxpayer dollars. So this class of people that think they're so smart, all you got to do is show up at the meeting, listen to what they say, and have the spine to stand up and speak against it. And they don't have much to say after that. Their knowledge is shallow. Their knowledge and understanding is shallow because they're only doing what someone else is telling them to do.
Right.
So us country class that is concerned and curious and well-researched. I have county commissioners that are county coordinators that are so well-researched in some of these issues. They're smarter than me. They're smarter than these commissioners in these issues. And they show up and they have facts and knowledge. And as a result, we've been able to stop solar farms in a few of these counties, stop wind farms in a few of these counties, disrupt these giant Soviet-style central planning projects through the Indiana Economic Development Corporation in my county. We've been able to slow them down, disrupt them, and stop them on some levels. So you want to talk about activity? That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like, we have to engage or we've lost the fight.
Well, because a perfect example, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the perfect example, Charles, is we keep hearing that one person can't make a difference, right? You're just one person. What kind of a difference have you been making, right? What team have you built? Right?
Yeah.
That's what people don't understand, is that all of us are going through it. Most people are looking for leadership, and leaders stand up and start doing what needs to be done, regardless of whether anybody else joins them, regardless of whether anybody else comes and pats them on the back. They're there doing what needs to be done, and that's what you've been doing, and that's why I jump behind you. I think it's important for the people of America to understand that for us to get our America back, it's going to take people like you. Let's wrap up with Molly Hemingway here and what she has to say, and I want to hear your thoughts on how she closes up. Is this the America we want, or is this the America that we currently recognize?
Instead of a system of rule of law that gives Americans the same rights and due process, the Department of Justice and other partisan actors are prosecuting their opposition, whether powerful or lowly, and doing so in places where partisan juries will ensure a quick conviction. Instead of a free and independent press that shares news and information to help inform voters, we have a press that is almost exclusively the arm of one political party and is so corrupt that it is willing to perpetrate hoax after hoax against opposition party members. Instead of a vibrant public square where Americans can debate issues and express their strongly held views, we have an elaborate censorship industrial complex where the government works hand in hand with tech oligarchs to suppress and blacklist debate on all the important issues that contribute to election outcomes. This is something I know firsthand because our government worked with tech companies to censor me for my election reporting. Allowing just one of these attacks to infect our electoral system would be a crisis. Allowing all of them at the same time is an existential threat to our system of self-government. In my best-selling book on how election administration has been co-opted by groups seeking political power, I reported on a new phenomenon in the 2020 election that has already severely eroded trust and needs to be addressed decisively. In the last presidential election, nonprofit groups with very strong ties to the Democrat Party and funded by one of the world's wealthiest and most powerful men, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, took over government election offices, most notably in the Democrat areas of swing states. Since then, the efforts by partisans to further infiltrate government election offices to ensure favorable outcomes have only increased. I look forward to answering questions about how the private...
Did you hear what she said there towards the end? Exactly what you've been talking about, the message that you've had all night, that these issues that are so important, that seem disconnected, all come back to self-governance. Mm-hmm. Us calling the shots for ourselves instead of letting the oligarchs and the special interests do it.
No doubt about it. And if the pre-roll to Tucker, that he released a couple days ago about this interview, he said in that the media outlets are corrupt and a lie by omission. And that is so true. That is what they're doing. They're corrupt and they're lying by omission. And the unfortunate thing is when you start getting involved like we have done here in Indiana, really at the grassroots effort, and I'm not the first, of course, there's been people that are doing this for decades before me, that we end up doing it by the rules. We work under their rules that they've made, that they know through and through, that they manipulate, and that they don't follow themselves. She's just articulating the lies and the corruption that they perpetrate under a set of rules that they've designed, while the rest of us, a country class, the common man, has to work under those rules. So it is what it is, and we're doing it. But the difference is that they're complacent. They're sitting back thinking that they've got everything under control, and we are hustling. We are working every single day. We are hustling, and we are making progress. So they can set these rules up, but they can never, ever hold back the 3%. They'll never squash liberty. They'll never do it, ever. Liberty will always prevail. And we're seeing it right now in Indiana. I think we're seeing it in the entire nation, and we'll see in 2024, but I'm very optimistic.
Let me ask you one last question here, then I want to get to some of the events that we have coming up here in the next couple of weeks. One of the comments that comes up time and time again, Charles, especially when you start raising your voice about these issues, is that they say that you're angry. You sound so angry. Would you explain the difference between anger and passion?
Yeah, I don't think I'm getting angry. It's not the emotion that I'm feeling. I feel intensity, not anger. I mean, in Scripture, it's clearly written that that's not an emotion that we're supposed to give into. Anger is emotional. Anger is reactionary. Anger can get you in trouble. Anger is something that you try to suppress and not release. Emotion and passion is a conviction. It is something that we feel inherent in us, and you can't let it out. And in fact, you can't suppress it, is what I mean to say. And in fact, I'll say that I was by trade, my professional career was in sales, and I would been told many times that was a skill set that I had, was the ability to talk passionately with conviction about what I was selling. And the reason is because I was always working with companies that I really believed in what we were doing. It really was disruptive, like robotic surgery, for example, very disruptive and incredible. And I could get behind it because I saw what it did for people's lives. And that's the difference. It's something that's natural. It's something that's true. And it's something that you can't fake.
Well, I think a lot of times people, when they hear you raise your voice on something, they hear anger, that you're upset or mad. And I've always said, well, if I'm yelling at the top of my voice with a smile on my face, I'm not mad. If my tail is wagging, I'm not mad. If my ears are down, I'm not mad. Read the room, is that passion is not the same as anger. And my fear is that people that confuse those things don't allow people to show their passion for their nation, how they feel, what they fear is coming next, what they see is happening on the horizon, and what world leaders are telling us that they're going to do to us. It's no secret. It's not a conspiracy theory. They've said it. It's in their books. And it's now up to us to stand up and say no, to stand in the gap and say, that's not passing me. And Charles, that's why I jumped behind you. I can't be more proud of the race that you're in and what you're doing here.
I appreciate that. Look, I'll say one more thing about that. Anger and passion. Passion, you don't apologize for. I've never had to apologize for being passionate. I have had to apologize for anger, right? So anger, you make mistakes. It's not controllable. And good doesn't come from it. Passion, you don't apologize for. Anger, you oftentimes have to apologize for. Big difference.
Let's get into what's going on here in the next few weeks in the Charles Bookwalter for Congress campaign. What events do we have coming up, Charles, that we want to tell the people about?
Yeah, I want to encourage everyone again to, if you're in Indiana, you can go down to the oral arguments that will be occurring at the Indiana Supreme Court on this Monday, which will be the 12th. And that's at 9 a.m. That's a two primary rule, John Russ case. Kramer, you and I will both be down there, and it should be interesting for those that like that kind of history. That Friday, which will be, I'd better pull up a calendar. That Friday, the 16th, we have our fundraiser in Morgan County at the Foxcliff Golf Club in Martinsville, Indiana. That's from 5 to 8. We've got a team that is setting that up. I look forward to that. Something else we do is we door knock every Saturday and Sunday through the 4th Congressional District. So I'd ask anybody that wants to get involved, please contact the campaign, and we can get you set up with the right county coordinator. And that, I'll bring this up. This is something that we're doing. I'm not sure that people want me to necessarily talk about, but Saturday the 10th, there is a Jaron Jackson event. Those of you that don't know, Jaron Jackson is a fundamental law specialist, a former combat military veteran, and one of the, I believe he's one of the original 201 signers of that Military Accountability Act, Military Accountability Pledge to hold the Department of Justice accountable for the COVID vaccine. That event is Saturday, February 10th at Bass and Buck Star Lodge in Wabash, Indiana. So you can contact me about that if you're interested in going to that Jaron Jackson event. He told us that we could invite anybody. So then, like I say, the fundraiser at 5 p.m. in Morgan County on the 16th. We have door knocking on Saturday the 17th in multiple counties. We door knock every Saturday and then Sundays after church. Then moving into that next week at the 19th, if you can contact the campaign if you're in the Indianapolis area. I'm speaking at a big veterans group there at lunch, and then we're headed down to Shepherdsville, Kentucky for the Veterans for America First event at the Paracoy Springs Conference Center. It's the American Revival Project with General Michael T. Flynn. I will be speaking there. It is expected to be a very large event. You can check it out. Veterans for America First, the America Revival Project, in Evening with General Flynn. That's on the 19th, starting at 4 p.m. And then finishing out that week, we've got a Lincoln Day dinner on Tuesday in Tippecanoe County that will be at that one. And next Thursday is our digital town hall that we always do every Thursday evening.
Let's talk about the event that you don't have a date on yet, but it's going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be a high-ticket fundraiser. It's open nationally. You don't have to be from Indiana. If you want to help out the campaign, it's going to be a great event. If you want to get in and learn about operators, and it's called an operator experience. Explain what you're talking about here.
We do have a date. We're just trying to make sure we can confirm with General Flynn when he is available. He can't be there in person. That he's going to be there live over Zoom. It's going to be the 22nd and 23rd of March. It's an experience with operators. We have multiple tier 1 operators that will be giving a demo. And
for a moment, for those that don't know what an operator is, explain what an operator, because I was stupid too. I didn't know what it was.
Well, operators, typically, you wouldn't even call a Green Beret an operator, although sometimes we do refer to that. Operators are tier 1 level units within the United States military, like SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force, also known as CAG. And we will have a number of those operators from those tier 1 units, SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force, that will be at a fundraiser for us, shooting alongside you if you decide to come and join us in the fundraiser on a pistol range, offering little tips and tricks about shooting as you shoot alongside them. That shooting will be around 2 hours. We'll have a simulator there for people that just want to shoot on a simulator. We're going to have other side tables and side events like how to set up your body armor, TCCC, which is Tactical Combat Casualty Care. So we'll be giving lessons with real life, high-level, barrel-chested freedom fighters. You can rub elbow with SEAL Team 6 members, talk to them, ask them questions. They'll be happy to tell stories and talk to you about it. Same with some of these Delta Force operators that will be speaking at this event. The Friday night before, we'll have General Flynn on a live. What we intend to have, and it's not confirmed, but it's been initially approved but not confirmed, that'll be 1 hour with General Flynn, and where you can ask questions. He'll give a little bit of a commentary and then a Q&A at a venue in the 4th Congressional District, very likely in the Tippecanoe County area. And then we'll be going up to Briggs Corps Dynamic, which is a shooting range in Fowler, Indiana, that Saturday, all day long. Food will be provided. It's going to be a great amount of fun for anybody that wants to learn a little bit about what operators do. We'll have demos with these operators as they shoot, move, and communicate, and it'll be open to the general public. So more that information will be released very soon. We look forward to having people show up to have some fun and have an experience with an operator.
There you go. I think that does it for the schedule. Charles, great show tonight. It was really enlightening on some of your insights and so on. I can't wait for the next one. With that being said, do you have anything else to say?
No, if you have any questions, please go to my website, bookwalterforcongress.com. You can email us at charles@bookwalterforcongress or info@bookwalterforcongress.com. You ask us any questions, and we'll get back to you pretty quickly. Follow us on Facebook, bookwalterforcongress.com. My Twitter handle is @TCBookwalter. I talk about a number of issues, a breadth of issues, and I'm very transparent on my issues. So I'm happy to discuss some of this stuff with you, and I appreciate all the support that we've gotten up to this point. I'm very optimistic about this and about our future. But despite what we say, I am white-pilled. Jesus is my savior. I know that we're in good hands. I know that we're going to win, and liberty will prevail. God will prevail. It just can be frustrating, intimidating, and oppressive when and when you're in the midst of it. But like they say in Army's 1st Special Forces Group, illegitimi non carborundum. Don't let the bastards hold you down.
And with that, we're out of here. Thank you so much.
Who is Charles Bookwalter? Charles is a husband, father, entrepreneur, and former Green Beret. But most importantly, Charles Bookwalter is a constitutional conservative. Charles Bookwalter will work to close our borders, ensuring the safety and security of our nation. Charles will fight to secure your personal medical freedoms, giving you complete control over your own healthcare decisions. And Charles Bookwalter will continue his fight to secure our elections, ensuring every vote counts. On May 7th, you have a choice.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.